Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Sauceman.net show, which is a podcast I'm going to hopefully do every week. I really just kind of want to go over in this episode why I'm starting a podcast and just get something short and quick out there. So, basically, I feel like I used to participate a lot more online when I was younger, and I kind of missed that. And the typical way to participate for most people is just go on social media, but I don't know, like I used to do a lot more on social media when it was kind of, I don't know, like just starting out and there were only a few people on there. It was mostly my friends, but I don't know, like nowadays it just kind of seems like a war of the circle jerks where you just get all these groups that hate each other and like it's not too much fun to go on social media these days, in my opinion. And it just kind of seems like people not listening to each other and just sort of trying to get likes. So that's basically the reason that I'm starting a podcast, not to mention that all of the social media sites are closed platforms and they're really just kind of operating under the idea of like we need to boost engagement at the expense of really anything else. And I mean, for me, I don't really care what their engagement is. I'd rather use a platform that's catered to me. So podcasting is great because it's the most popular medium built on the open web, and it's not controlled by any one entity. So people can put their content out on the open web, and people can also build apps like Overcast, which is a nice podcast player on iOS. And you can really have people building an infinite number of competing experiences on top of the open web. It's not just a closed platform controlled by one company that they really have sort of a monopoly on the experience. And so that's a big part of why I'm choosing to do a podcast. And some of the other reasons are it just really allows for a much more in-depth discussion. So you can get a sense of where people are coming from. And it also requires a bit more of an investment to participate on the web as opposed to these like social media platforms because you have to start your own website, and I think it eliminates a lot of the noise and spam that sort of plague these social media sites. Like whenever I post something on social media that I think might be slightly controversial, it just feels bad because I feel like I'm coming off as angry because I don't really have like on Twitter, I just have 280 characters. I don't really have room to elaborate on how I came to certain conclusions or really even convey my tone. Like I'm not I'm not just like super pissed off. And I think I don't know, like I'll go on Twitter, it seems like everybody's pissed off, but I'm sure people aren't really that mad. At least I hope everyone's not that mad. But I think it's easy when we see stuff on social media to just sort of attribute anything that doesn't agree with our worldview completely to, I don't know, like somebody just being a bad person because we don't really get too in depth on how they came to their perspective. And it just doesn't leave me with that great of a feeling when I log onto Twitter or some of these other platforms. I mean, I like to think that most people are generally good, but of course we're all humans and imperfect. What I think is really important is the incentives placed on people and what those incentives bring out of them. So I don't think they're, quote, good people and bad people. I think it's a lot more about the incentives. And I think the incentives on social media just tend to bring out the worst in people, unfortunately. And I'll elaborate more on this at some point, but I think a lot of our institutions just in general have decayed to the point where the incentives unfortunately bring out the worst in people. And I think we spend way too much time focusing on attacking people with the idea that, oh, like these are just bad people and that's the problem, as opposed to taking a look at the incentives created by these institutions, which people generally view as unchangeable. So I think that's kind of why we focus on people. I think the focus should be more on the institutions, which may be things like government or social media platforms. I mean, the list could go on, but I think there are better ways to do things. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll talk more about this later on a different episode of the show. But anyway, back to why I'm starting a podcast. I've really always wanted to, and I thought podcasting was a great medium for quite a long time, but I just really had trouble, number one, producing it. Like, whenever I would record something, it just did not sound that great. And it didn't sound like something that I would continuously listen to. And recently, I guess I didn't start playing guitar recently. It's been a while, but I started watching a lot more guitar videos on YouTube, and they kind of took me down this rabbit hole where, like it'll just kind of start playing related videos. And I eventually got into sort of like audio equipment and stuff. So I think I'm to the point where I have a decent enough sounding podcast. And the second problem I've had has been coming up with content. So in the past, I would do some tutorial videos and some guitar covers. And I think I'm going to still do some stuff like that. But in order to make it more consistent, I'm going to focus on building stuff. So it's not just sort of like one and done episodes. I want something that, I can choose a project to work on, and I can do a little bit each week on the podcast and sort of go at my own pace. I think with my content before, it seemed like much more of an investment each episode than just sort of like doing what I can, setting it aside, and then picking it back up maybe the next week. So as far as music and guitar stuff goes, I've kind of reached this plateau where in the past I would just sort of get over it by buying new stuff, which would really just kind of open up a bunch of new sounds that I could play around with. Now I'm at the point where I'm interested in creating some of my own stuff, but at the moment I have really no idea what I'm doing, so I probably won't do too much of that quite yet, because really, like, my experience with guitar is just I got a guitar because I like music. I wanted to try and play some songs that I knew, and I didn't really start with a real like theoretical understanding of music at all. I just kind of look at like videos online and read some tabs, and then I'll just like try playing some stuff. But I really have no idea how to compose like music. So I would like to start learning that, but I don't think I'll have too much content on that anytime soon, because I need to kind of figure out what I'm doing. But I think that'll be something interesting to talk about. I know much more about web development, and as I talked about earlier, I'm somewhat frustrated with the state of the web right now. So I'm going to start building some stuff on top of the open web, and I think just really do like a mix between tutorial videos and sort of like an explanation of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and why I think other people should produce more on the open web as opposed to on these platforms. And, like for me, I think it'll be sort of like I'll have the open web as my hub, and then I'll post content, of course, like I'm posting this to YouTube. I don't even have a website up yet. So I think I'm going to use the open web and my website as sort of my central hub, and then use these platforms just as sort of ways to bring in viewers to my content, and really just let people experience it any way that they want to. So I've been meaning to do this for a really long time, but I just haven't had much discipline. And I think doing a podcast weekly will enforce some of that discipline. And I'm going to start with just building my own website. Like I kind of said earlier, just a place for me to put content on the open web. And the thing I'm going to work on is going to be a mix between some older projects that I've done that basically did that, made it so you could host a website. And I posted some ideas on stack.com a while ago, but at this point, I think I'm just going to focus on hosting my own personal website instead of like any grand ambitions where like a bunch of people can host a website. I would like to make something for everyone to use, but I just don't have time to make a full-blown product right now. But who knows? I mean, maybe in the future I'll open it up, and if you support me on Patreon or something like that, I'll let you use it. But aside from that, I'll probably make some content about how to create content. So I don't really know too much. I do know a decent amount about the audio stuff, and that's really just what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to post some audio files, but I would like to get into video production as well. But I don't really know too much about that yet. So that's all I really have for this first episode. I will probably not do an episode next week. Maybe I'll do one the week after that. I'm going to be out of town on vacation. So, I'll probably start this back up after the holidays sometime. So, I'll talk to you then.